And so now the redistricting plan that the Texas put in place to benefit Republicans will continue, and will likely be the basis for the 2026 election. There was a big victory for the rule of law at the Supreme Court level this week. What had been happening in Texas, you've been following, I'm sure, the leftist caterwauling over the Texas redistricting plan that would make it much more likely for Republicans to obtain 5 new congressional seats next year. And the left challenged that plan, Democrats, as being based on race, that they said that the Republicans had changed the districts using race in a way that was contrary to law. And the defense of the Republicans was, no, it's partisan. We were changing it to get a partisan advantage. That's perfectly legal. And the fact that minorities tend to support Democrats, that's the coincidence of it making it look like a racial gerrymander. Well, the lower court threw out the Texas districts, essentially buying the left-wing canard that it was race-based when it was partisan-based. And the Supreme Court said, no, 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 no. You're not going to do this. First of all, the election has already started, and you're not following the rules about how to analyze this. And I think it's important because you don't really get a feel for this from the liberal media because they pretend everything is racist that Republicans or conservatives do. And in this case, it was embraced by a court in a way that upended, I would argue, a democracy. And I explained it here in a lengthy post to X that I think is worth sharing because it kind of summarizes the issues I talked about in a good way and gives you a feel for what the issue is. So they stayed the ruling of the lower court. It was a panel, 2-1 decided against the Texas legislature, Texas. And so now the redistricting plan that the Texas put in place to benefit Republicans will continue and will likely be the basis for the 2026 election. So as I highlight online here, it's the Supreme Court decision in the Texas redistricting case is an important victory for constitutional federalism, the rule of law, and democracy. Yes, I know we're a constitutional republic, but our republic has democratic features, right? We vote and elect people, and we get to decide how a lot of our elections take place through votes or, in the case of redistricting, voting for state legislators who then exercise their discretion on behalf of voters to set up congressional districts which affect representation in Congress. And the Supreme Court just upheld, as I said, Texas's redistricting plan against, as I call it, activist judges. And this is the quote from the Supreme Court ruling. Activist judges who improperly inserted themselves into an active primary campaign, causing much confusion and upsetting the delicate federal-state balance in elections. And one core point, which kind of just blows out, you won't ever really get a full understanding from this from the media, and hopefully I'm able to explain it to you, is that the basic thing that needs to be done in these types of disputes was not done, and the court didn't give a rat's tail about it and punish Texas despite the rule not being followed. When you allege that a redistricting plan is based on race and not based on partisanship, if it's based on race, again, unlawful in theory. If it's based on partisanship, lawful. The defense against that is, look, there's no distinction between the two. It may look like race to you, but it's partisan. and the race is just a natural coincidence associated with minority support for Democrats. So it should be no surprise that it looks like it's a racial decision when in fact it's purely demographic and based on partisanship. It's not demographic at all, it's just partisan. And as I wrote, one key point is that the leftist Democratic Party challengers falsely asserted that Texas redrew maps based on race, which is unlawful, as I've noted, rather than partisan advantage, which is lawful. When making such an allegation, one is generally supposed to offer an alternative map drawn to achieve the same partisan advantage without racial considerations. So if you're alleging, oh, that's all about race, you could have gotten to the same result in terms of partisan advantage if you had used this map. You're supposed to present that alternative map. They didn't, which suggests they knew it was a lie, that it was a partisan map and race was not the motivator. The challengers did not bother to do that, make that map available, and the lower court couldn't be bothered to make them do it as the rules require. And as Justice Alito noted in a concurrence supporting the order, let's bring up that concurrence, I'll show it to you. So what happens here, this is kind of the court issued an order staying the decision lower and basically allowing the Texas case to go forward, the Texas maps to be reinstated. And sometimes orders are, one pages. We order this. Sometimes they explain why they've issued the order. In this case, you had some justices explain in a concurrence, as Alito filed, why they supported the outcome, and the dissent, 3 justices dissented, filed a lengthy dissent. This is how Justice Alito explains it. Maybe he explains it better than I did. You can understand it more clearly. Because of the correlation between race and partisan preference, as I noted, Democrats benefit from minority votes disproportionately. Litigants can easily use claims of racial gerrymandering for partisan ends. And he cites the case law. To prevent this, our precedents place the burden on the challengers to disentangle race and politics. Thus, when the asserted reason for a map is political, it is critical for challengers to produce an alternative map that serves the state's allegedly partisan aim just as well as the map the state adopted. So in essence, they're saying, if you say, oh, they use race to get to their end result, you have to present a map that says they could have used partisanship to get to the same end result. And if they don't, you presume the state was honest in the saying that they were using it for, they were analyzing the redistricting based on partisan benefit. Although respondents' experts could have easily produced such a map, if that were possible, they did not, giving rise to a strong inference that the state's map was indeed based on partisanship, not race. Neither the duration of the district court's hearing, so the left was saying, oh, they had all sorts of evidence for months, nor the length of its majority opinion, and they wrote a long opinion justifying their activism, provides an excuse for failing to apply the correct legal standards as set out clearly in our case law. So between the majority decision or the majority opinion for the ruling and Alito's concurrence, they are saying the courts acted improperly below and politically below, didn't follow the rules, and improperly interfered with an election. So when it comes to election rigging or election interference, it's not just politicians playing games or parties trying to rig elections. Sometimes courts interfere in elections too. And here, the Supreme Court put an end to that, at least in Texas. So a significant victory for the rule of law, and highlighting how the courts can interfere in our elections just as dramatically as folks we more typically think of in terms of election rigging. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.